Hello, everybody, and welcome back. It is time once again for Bunker Boys. As you can see, I'm flying solo today. Slade is a little hungover from his big fantasy win this past weekend, but he is at work, so it'll gonna be me by myself. Hopefully, this goes okay. But we are gonna talk all about the RBC heritage and the wild finish that we had with the playoff between Fitzpatrick and Spieth. Break the full thing down. I'm also going to talk about Rory's penalty, which is he's not going to get his $3 million bonus, and what that means, and my thoughts on that. A lot of PGA pros have spoke out about it as well. Uh, we have a lot to talk about with the Zurich Classic this weekend. We're going to talk fantasy picks for that, of course, and just talk about the format in general. And then we're going to talk. We have growing our game back this week as well. We're going to talk about some of our target percentages and stuff for certain things and what we think is most important to improving our game for this upcoming year. But like I said, we have a lot to talk about. So let's go ahead and dive right in to the RBC Heritage and talk about the wild weekend that Fitzpatrick and Spieth delivered to us. It really looked like Spieth was kind of going to close it out there to finish. He was up 2 strokes late in the round, and really, in my opinion, I feel like he played a little bit too conservatively. I understand, having a 2 stroke lead, especially late. The other guys weren't playing amazingly well there, and you don't want to take unnecessary risks. But I feel like he played it very safe a lot of the times. Um, I know. I think it was 15, the long par five when he hit the drive right. I mean, obviously that wasn't his intention, but I feel like just in his mind, he's like, okay, let's just not put this ball, out of bounds. And I think when you do that as a competitive golfer, when you don't keep your foot on the pedal, and I think it's the same for really any sport. I mean, you look at football. If somebody gets up to a big lead, especially late in the game, and they're like, all right, if they take their foot off the pedal, if they relax a little bit, it definitely lets their opponent come in. Matt Fitzpatrick had a couple openings. He made some great shots coming down the stretch. He had a huge putt there on 17 and looked really good. Or maybe it wasn't 17 because in regulation he missed the putt right, then over or playoff he missed it left. Um, but I believe it was 15 or 16 where he stuck it really close from far out and kind of started to put the screws to Jordan Spieth. Spieth was able to bounce back and answer and force a playoff. They both played 18 marvelously, and as did Patrick Cantlay. I don't think you could play that golf hole any better than those three played it in the final round there. Um, but like I said, I think Jordan Spieth just kind of took his foot off the pedal and was trying to avoid making mistakes. And I think that let Matt Fitzpatrick really catch up to him and was able to ultimately force a playoff. And then once you're in the playoff, Spieth just could not catch a break on 18 and 17. Had two putts that should have fallen. I mean, I feel like if you or I were out there playing around the golf and we hit one of those putts exactly like that, especially on 18, where it rolled around the lip and then kind of fell away. I really feel like if anybody else was out there, that putt would have fallen. He just did not have any luck with that. And then he goes to 17, hits a perfect putt, just hits it a hair too slow. So right as it gets to the hole, it uses the fringe of the cup to break away. I mean, if you look at both of those putts, if on the first playoff hole in 18, if he hits that, a fraction of a hair lighter, that putt's going to fall. If you look at 17, if he hits that a fraction of a hair harder, that putt's going to fall. So just terrible luck. And of course, if you leave the door open like that enough times, Matt Patrick wasn't making mistakes. He just wasn't, making huge shots that cemented that it was his turn to win that tournament. And Spieth left the door open wide enough. They go back to 18, and Fitzpatrick. I thought that ball was going to go in. I don't know again how the ball didn't fall. Um, Stops about 2 feet short. Spieth shoots it over, or not entirely off the back of the green, but left himself almost an impossible putt. Isn't able to make it. Fitzpatrick taps in and wins his first tournament since the U.S. Open last year. His second career PGA win. But I'm a huge fan of Matt Fitzpatrick and his game. I know he's a very meticulous player. He documents, all his shots. And it's well, documented. But that's what he does after every round. He has to document every shot, and what the lie was, and so on and so forth. And so I'm. This is going to be a guy that's going to be around for years. I feel like he's going to be a Jordan Spieth-esque player, where he's always in contention at majors. He always has a threat to go out there and win these tournaments. He's gotten off to a rough start this year, but the last few weeks he's really put together some strong finishes, and it it's nice to see that finally pay off for a win with him. Looking at the top 5 here, so Fitzpatrick beats Spieth in the playoff at 17 under. Cantlay, really just didn't put any shots together on Sunday all day, it seemed like. Kind of faded, especially early, and just hung around, and wasn't able to mount a charge, and then he gets 18 and makes it an incredible putt, for birdie to get him to 16 under and solo third. Xander Schauffele had an amazing Sunday. He was the clubhouse leader there for a little bit, and they were talking about, if these guys stumble coming down the final stretch, 16, 17, 18, we could have, a 3, 4 way playoff, whatever. And Xander Schauffele could be sitting there waiting, but just not enough to get it done, but still a huge day for him on Sunday to get himself into the top 5. Sahith Theegala gets a top 5 as well at 14 under, tied with Hayden Buckley. Hayden Buckley was a name that kind of came out of nowhere, at least in my opinion, on Sunday. All of us were scoreboard watching, but we were watching the big names at the top: Scheffler, Spieth, Fitzpatrick, Cantlay. We were watching all those names, and here comes Hayden Buckley kind of creeping into that top 5. Again, this was an amazing tournament. It was a designated event, so you were going to have a star-studded field. Um, but just how well everybody across the board played, from top to bottom. There were so many comers and goers throughout the weekend. I mean, I can think of at least 3 off the top of my head. You had Damon, Joel Damon, the fan favorite. He goes out on Friday. He's tied for the lead. He shoots a great round. He's feeling good. He comes back on, Thursday. He was tied for the lead. Comes back on Friday and plays terrible, misses the cut. You had Hovland, who was battling for the lead the first 2 days, goes into Saturday and shoots +7 on Saturday, kind of eliminates himself from any contention at all. And then you had Walker, who was leading all day Friday and through a good part of the day on Saturday when he was paired with Scheffler. Um, you could see he started to unravel a little bit there throughout the day on Saturday. Um, but I mean, still he had a pretty good weekend. I mean, far better than what I think anybody would have expected for him. It was on the played in the tournament due to a money earnings exemption. So it was great to see him make the most of it. He finishes top 25 or tied for 25th. So that one wasn't as drastic as what we saw the other guys do. I think it was more so Walker was playing probably a little bit above his potential. That, or maybe the other guys you could say were even sleeping a little bit. And then once the weekend finally came around, we saw Fitzpatrick, Spieth, and like those big names really start to show how good they were. I will say, to me, it was kind of surprising to see Scheffler struggle as much as he did. Was in the final pairing on Saturday, and just it almost looked like there was no rhythm to his game on Saturday. And he couldn't establish and start put together really good scores and stay at the top of the leaderboard. Fell down a couple spots, and then Sunday again, just really kind of a mediocre round for what we expect from Scotty Scheffler. Obviously, far better than anything I could ever do. So who am I to judge? But just what we've come so used to seeing out of Scotty Scheffler. It was definitely it was weird to see it. So not the greatest showing for him, and unfortunately, and that's back to back tournaments. You look at the Masters, where everybody expected him to go out there and again compete for the win. He just won there last year, so you are kind of wondering, what's going on. Is he okay, or is it just the ebbs and flow of golf? And I think personally, Scotty Scheffler is going to be more than fine going forward. But it is something to keep an eye on. I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking about him finishing, back-to-back top tens, and that's struggling for a golfer. So I think he'll be more than fine going forward, and I'm excited to see where he plays the rest of the year. I still think he wins a major this year. He finished top 5 at the Open last year. The PGA Championship is the only one he really wasn't, competitive in, I would say. That whole weekend was dominated by Pereira and Zalatoris, and then you had Justin Thomas storm back on Sunday to win it. Um, but U.S. Open again, he was up there at the top of the leaderboard as well. So I think we're going to see another. My guess is we're going to see another major championship for Scotty Scheffler this year. Um, Talking about Rory McIlroy, he had to withdraw from the RBC Heritage this past week. This is the second designated event that he missed out on. He missed the Century Tournament of Champions back in January. And so the rules stated when they laid out these designated events last year was, all the top guys were committing to play in these. And that was Rory's big thing too is, hey, we're all going to play in these tournaments. Um, and so to see him withdraw definitely put a hamper on things. We like these designated events because it brings out the most. I said it last week. I didn't really agree with having a designated event the week after the Masters. A major championship, especially the Masters, takes a lot out of these guys, and especially with the weather. And I know you can't predict the weather, ahead of time. Almost a full year ahead of time. Um, but, the weather, obviously, they played just about 36 holes on Sunday last week. Some of these guys are, it was a long day. Um, and so I'd have to turn around and play it, a week later. And then weather was causing havoc on Thursday as well. I kind of pushed some of the rounds, to finish on Friday morning. But luckily, they were able to keep the tournament on track through the rest of the week. Um, but I didn't think they should have a designated event the week after a major. I understand, we're getting into that time of year now. There's gonna be one a month. I still think there would have been a better way to space it out. I'm not saying the RBC Heritage didn't deserve to be it. It is a great tournament, and obviously the stars love going there. It is probably one of my favorite golf courses to watch these guys compete on. Sitting there, Oceanside in South Carolina, just off of Hilton Head. It's beautiful scenery. It's a difficult golf course, and it brings out the best in these guys. So I agree with them getting the designated event status. I just don't think it should have been the week after the Masters. I kind of understand that's the normal schedule, but I feel like an adjustment could have been made to move it to either this week or even a week later, and put it closer to more so in between the Masters and the PGA Championship. Um, but I don't know if a reason was ever given as to why Rory withdrew. But with that being his second withdrawal, he forfeits a $3 million bonus from the PIP ratings, with him finishing second. I believe he was supposed to get $10 million if he played all the designated events. If you miss two, you forfeit 30% of that. So for him, that was $3 million. And I know one key vocalist for him not taking that penalty was Ricky Fowler. And I know a lot of fans had this kind of sentiment around it as well as nobody has championed the PGA more than Rory McIlroy through, especially all this live and everything. Um, and while I do agree with that, and if anybody was going to get a pass from it, I'm surprised it wasn't Rory. But at the same time, these are the rules that have been laid out perfectly clear from the beginning. Hey, if you miss two of these designated events, that everybody last year when we brought this up, and Rory really pushed for this, to become a thing. Um, so if you're not going to abide by those rules, I agree with him taking the penalty. Um, and so while I do understand, he has been such a champion for the PGA and really pushed and carried the PGA flag through, all this turmoil they've gone through for the last year and a half. Um, it sucks to see him take that penalty, but again, he knew what he was signing up for. It's honestly kind of refreshing to see, these leagues. We always feel like top players and the NBA or the MLB or even the NFL get the preferential treatment. We made jokes for years that Tom Brady and Peyton Manning's expense that they got treated like superstars. We do the same thing with LeBron. So it's nice to see them still hold all the golfers accountable, even somebody who has the status like Rory. Maybe they could have said, "Hey, we're not going to take quite the full 30%," but that's another debate. But nonetheless, Rory's going to give up $3 million. At the end of the day, it sucks for him, but I'm sure he's not really sweating it with all the endorsements and stuff he has, and he's still hoping to win plenty of tournaments here, later in the year. And I think he'll definitely make up that $3 million deficit. Um, Another thing we want to talk about real quick is an update on the FedEx Cup standings. So there's about 4.5 months left of the FedEx Cup. There's three majors left, and then of course the FedEx Cup playoffs. So we just want to take a look at that, and I picked two guys that stuck out to me as a little surprising, honestly. And I think part of it is maybe not used to seeing them there. The first one is Keegan Bradley, who is in fourth right now. Not really a name, and I know he has had a really consistent year this year, but that's not really a name that I would have imagined being inside the top five of the FedEx Cup standings, especially kind of this far into the season. He's made 10 out of 13 cuts in the events that he's entered. He has seven top 25s, four top 10s, one second place finish, and one win. That was at the Zozo Championship in October. And that was, obviously a 500 point, boost for him, which is going to help. But just been very consistent. I was surprised to see him, not just be at number 4, but able to maintain that number 4 position through a lot of these big tournaments where, guys like John Rahm, Scotty Scheffler, and so on, McIlroy have come back and competed in them, kinda stacked the field more so than you would have saw, like, the Zozo or the Shriners Championship, events like that. And so, I mean, shout out to Keegan Bradley. I know he's not the most liked guy on the PGA Tour, but he's still putting in a lot of work and obviously having a very consistent year to be inside the top 5. I would say, getting ready to head in the bank, here in mid-April. The other guy I was looking at, was Tony Finau. Um, I would have if you would have told me last year that, coming into this point of the year, Tony Finau would be 10th, and it wouldn't really be, close. He's kind of flirting with not even being inside the top 10. I would have been surprised. I thought the way Finau finished last year, where he competed at the RBC Canadian Open, with Justin Thomas and Rory McIlroy and that great, those 3 guys coming down the stretch. The way he closed out the year, he had 2 wins then. Um, and then I feel like he played really well throughout the playoffs as well. Just to see him, and again, like we said, going back to Scheffler, looking at him 10th in the FedEx Cup standings right now and saying, "Wow, that's kind of struggling," is a huge nod to these guys, and for me, it's a tip of the cap because, like I said, I feel like just based off alone last year where he kind of played, I would have expected him to be a little bit higher at this point. I thought he would have been able to carry momentum in a little bit better. He's only missed 1 cut in the events he's entered this year. 9 top 25s, 3 top 10s, and 1 win at the Houston Open last fall as well. Um, so just overall, I would have expected, some of those top 25s to turn into more top 10s. 3 out of the 9, and then 2 of the cuts he also made as well that he just didn't finish in the top 25 at all. I think it's just a consistency issue. Obviously, he played really well last summer. He's going to get to some tournaments down the line here that he feels really comfortable at, that he can play well at, and he knows that. So I'm hoping that boosts his confidence a little bit more. I would like to see him play, at that level more consistently. I'm a huge Tony Finau fan. I think he does great things for the world of golf. And following along with him and his family, on full swing this year, I think has put a lot of eyes on him as well. So I think overall there's more to see from Tony Finau this year, and I hope we see it, sooner rather than later. But again, sitting at top 10 in the FedEx Cup standings, I'm sitting here saying, oh, is he okay? Is he struggling? Just tells you how good of a golfer he is, and what our expectations of him are. Before we get into any more, want to remind you guys that our spring golf merch is live. So make sure you head over there and check it out. You can get this hat right here, the Jack Wagon Sports. You can see in the lower left here, with the golf stick. I'm too fat for cart path only. I'm only here for the turn dogs. And what would Daly do? Speaking of John Daly, he will be back this weekend, playing at the Zurich Invitational. So make sure you guys head over there. The link is in our bio. One other thing I wanted to point out real quick, as I go back away from this, is we have a giveaway. So a hat just like I'm wearing here, the Jack Wagon Sports hat, with the golf club for the J. When we hit 100 subscribers on YouTube, we're gonna give one of those away to a lucky subscriber that wins. So make sure you guys like and share. Make sure you spread the word about our podcast. We'd really appreciate it. We're at 57 right now, so we'd like to hit that at least 100. And then once we do, we're gonna do a little giveaway. So if you guys want to be entered to win one of these hats, just like I wear here, every week, you want to wear it out and support us, we'd really appreciate it. Once we hit 100 subscribers, we'll be giving one of those away. So now it's your guys' favorite time of the week. So let's go ahead. Let's look at the standings. Slade, like I said, had a huge win this weekend. Jumped all the way up. He scored 46 points. The next closest was 33. So a huge weekend for him. So he takes the lead out of the 3 of us. He's only 8 points behind Sam, our buddy Sam, who for the last couple weeks looked like was going to be untouchable here. But he slowly caught up to him. He's 8 points back. Nick is at 374, and I'm still dragging. I'm in the rear, 355. I'm 19 points back from Nick. So I mean, so for those of you that don't know, the punishment for finishing last in our golf league, is we have to do the Hot Ones challenge. And so I have to do it for finishing last this past season. So I'm really hoping I don't have to do it twice. So I'm just hoping I can at least get out at last. But I had a good week this week, put up 32 points, so I can't complain. But we'll see if I can close the gap and pass Nick here at least. Let's go ahead and look. We're gonna put up our fantasy picks for this week. So with it being a team event, our normal rule goes out the window. So for those of you that don't remember, we can only use the same golfer 7 times throughout the season. We started all the way back at the Farmers Insurance Open, and that carries through to the end of the season, through the Tour Championship. But with this being a team event and guys getting to play together, we thought it wasn't really fair that if I wanted to use Cantlay again, that it would count as a uses of Schauffele as well. So we're not going to count it this week. So this is a fun weekend for us. We get to pull all the tricks out of the bag. Guys that we've been kind of saving, so that way we make sure we don't use them all up too early in the year. Um, but enough of that. Let's go ahead and let's get into my picks. First up was Cantlay and Schauffele. This is the easiest pick I think of anybody. They are the defending champions of this. They have a great uh, bond between the two of them. They're the best friends I think on the entire tour. The only people that would say are closer are Scheffler and Burns. Scheffler is not playing in this. Um, but defending champs, they also set the course record last year when they played, and they're both coming off of the top 5 finish, like we just talked about at the RBC. So I think they are the easiest picks to make for this weekend. Uh, Next up, I have Homa and Morikawa. Yeah, these are two guys. They've not been playing up to their full potential this year, and I don't think they're happy about it. Homa misses the cut last week. I believe Morikawa finished like tied for 37th. Um, so Homa has 2 top 10s and his 5 starts since the Genesis, and he has 1 missed cut this past week. Morikawa has 2 top 10s and 7 starts since finishing third at the Farmers. So definitely guys that are looking to get a spark back into their season. Homa is trying to stop that slide and get back into his groove. I think this is a weekend where the two guys realize, hey, we can go out here, we can have a little bit of fun, we can also do a lot of good for each other. And so I think out of all of my picks for this week, this is the one I'm probably most on the fence about. But I also think they have the most potential as well. Next up, I have Thigala and Suh. Obviously, I've picked Thigala the last few weeks. I just love the wave that he's on right now. He has back-to-back top 10s, 7 this entire season. He also won the QBE shootout this past fall, which is another kind of team style event. Um, Suh has struggled since finishing top 5 at the Hana and top 6 at the Players. Being paired with Thigala, I think, will help elevate his game back to that level. And I think the two of these guys can do really good things together. Again, just with how good Thigala is playing, I think he can elevate Suh up there. Um, Suh also finished tied for 11th in 2021 when he played here with Doug Gim. So obviously he has some good history here, and I expect more of the same from these two. Next up, I have Burns and Horschel. These guys have played together the last 3 years, or this will be the 3rd year, excuse me. In 2021, they finished tied for 4th. In 2022, they finished 2nd. So runners up last year to again a record breaking performance. I'm expecting more of the same this year from these guys. I think they can definitely hang around for the lead. If Cantlay and Schauffele aren't putting up that record breaking performance again, these guys are going to be in a tight battle, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Um, Horschel really loves this kind of format. He has really good finishes here, even when he's not playing with Burns. And again, this is somebody who's been playing kind of lackluster here lately. He won the Memorial Tournament last year, and then he kind of just fell off. And I don't think we've ever seen him truly back since then. So this is a really good opportunity for him to bring that game back in, have a really good finish to get some momentum behind him, and see where that takes him for the rest of the year. Um, but I think, especially with the way Burns has been playing lately, just won the match play champ or bracket challenge. I think he has a lot of momentum, and he's just going to keep improving. Again, these guys finished second last year. I think first is absolutely in their sights. Next up, I have Tom Kim and Siwoo Kim, the Kim boys. I absolutely love this pairing. Tom Kim burst onto the scene last year. He looked amazing at the President's Cup. I think he also picked up a win last fall as well, and I believe the first event after the President's Cup. Um, but Siwoo's consistent top 30 player. He also has a win this year at the Sony Open. Uh, Again, Tom Kim just have an absolutely great rookie year. I think these two are kind of not necessarily an underrated pairing. I think a lot of eyes are going to be on them, but I think more so people are going to be focused on that Burns Horschel Cantley Schauffele pairs. I think that the two Kims can absolutely swoop in there and steal a win away. And last but not least, I have Sung J M and Keith Mitchell. Keith Mitchell finished tied for fourth year in 2021 with Brant Snedeker. Uh, the two of them combined are 26 out of 30 in events in top tens this year. The last four events, M is a top six, top 17, top 16, and top seven. Mitchell has struggled since finishing fifth at the Genesis. But again, this is obviously a tournament that he really likes and enjoys. And I think the two of these guys together with the kind of the streak that Sung J M is on, and then obviously how well Keith Mitchell does here, I think this is another really good pairing to watch out for. We're gonna go ahead. We're gonna look at Slade's pairings as well. A lot of the same. Cantley Schauffele, Homa Morikawa, Thigala Suh, Burns, and Horschel. The two different ones he has is Kitayama and Montgomery. Kitayama obviously won back at the Arnold Palmer. That really kind of we all thought that would jumpstart his season. He hasn't played terrible since then, but definitely not, you know, what you would expect out of somebody that just won a designated event. You kind of expect them to continue competing for wins, especially winning the Arnold Palmer Invitational. But again, not playing terrible either. Montgomery is having a really good year as well, kind of quietly, and so I expect these two to have a very good weekend as well. And Taylor and Hadwin, the Canadians, Hadwin, I thought would carry that momentum from the Phoenix Open to a really good year, and it kind of seems like he's stumbled since then. But the cool thing about this event is you take two golfers, even if they're having a terrible year, they can really feed off of each other's strengths and put together a solid weekend. So I really like Slade's fantasy team here as well. One thing I did want to talk about, we will not have any bets this week. I did go 2-0 last week. Slade went 0-2. He rode the Rom train. Rom didn't have a terrible weekend, but just not up to. And I don't think anybody can blame him. The week after winning the Masters. Um, but I will give you guys a couple of the um, bets I really like for this week. Most of them are just tournament lines. Obviously, I think Xander Schauffele and Patrick Cantlay being at plus 300, I think is a really good value for what they're bringing to the table. So I would absolutely look at that. The other one is Colin Morikawa and Max Homa being top 20 is at plus 100. Again, I think those are really good odds. I think these are two guys that are going to, like I just said, feed off of each other. Um, Homa's looking to get back onto his winning ways. Morikawa's trying to find his groove. It seems like ever since he lost the Century Tournament Champions when he was up by like 7 strokes, you can tell he looks a little rattled. He was not sure of his putting stroke. I think he's trying to just put together some momentum, and this is the event to do it. These guys both went to Cal, so I think Morikawa and Homa finishing, or excuse me, at the top 10 is plus 100 is a good way to double your money right there. So those are the two I like for this week. Now, the last thing that I'm going to talk about today is, and Nick brought this up. We asked him what we should talk about this week for growing our game. We talked about a few weeks ago what our goals, just general goals for the 2023 season are. And Nick said that we should take a statistical look at the areas that we think we need to improve the most, just looking at that and how we want to go about improving that, or what we think will be most important and improving that will lead to better results down the road. So the two stats I looked at outside of putts, because that's the one thing Slade and I were both talked about a lot when we talked about our 2023 goals. Is we want to plus three putts, get rid of three putts. So I looked at everything but that. I did look over my last 14 rounds. My average putts were 2.2, which I was actually really surprised by. Um, so the two I looked at were green in regulations and fairway hits. The one that surprised me the most was fairways hit. I was at 33.8%. I did not think it was going to be that high. I really feel like every time I'm out playing around the golf, I'm always over in the trees, especially on the right side, and this percentage kind of showed it. I hit 36.5% of my drives off to the right. Um, but the fact that I hit 33.8 in the middle of the fairway was really surprising to me. And greens in regulation, I'm at 13.1% over my last 14 rounds. Um, and looking back at my goals for this year, I said I wanted to hit, below 100 more consistently. And I wanted to reduce, my three putts as well. Um, but obviously hitting greens in regulation is going to be a huge part, to, getting that score, not just under 100, but again, doing it consistently. I've been putting a lot of work in the past few weeks. I just got new clubs. I got used gloves, but they're new to me. Last week, I'm very thankful for my wife. Um, I don't have the time to go out and play a full round of golf. I just had a newborn child. He turns 2 months old tomorrow, and so I don't have the time to go out and play a full round of golf. But she enjoys coming to the driving range with me. He likes to sit there in his little bassinet and his stroller, and it's nice, like little family time. We go out, we get to have fun, and I get to hit golf balls and work on my game. Um, I always joke about saying this, but last week I really feel like I found something that I can use to improve my game going forward. And the running joke in golf is whenever you find something on the driving range, the second you get onto the course, it's gone. Um, but for years, I just struggled with slicing the ball dead right. Couldn't understand it. I tried everything. I tried moving the ball up in my stance. I tried, all the tips and tricks that you see on TikTok and on YouTube and stuff on how to stop slicing your driver and the ultimate slice fix and all this other stuff. Um, and this is one thing I'll definitely pass on to you guys. But I just took a video myself, and it is going to seem awkward. And you don't have to go to the driving range and take a video of yourself. If you go in your backyard, or if your living room is big enough and you're not going to break anything, just set your camera up, right where your ball would be. Obviously, I did mine back a little bit, but just in that general line, and just take a swing. I have an iPhone, so I can do a slow motion feature. I don't know what all phones are like, but I did the slow motion, and I realized my club face is just wide open. Obviously, that's going to lead. Talked to our friend Sam. I was like, okay, what am I doing wrong here? What do I do to fix this? And for me, I really worked on push. So when you go back and you come up, your hands are naturally going to be open. Um, and so what I'm working on now is on my downswing, I'm pushing this arm back over top so it closes that club face more. And I noticed doing that, I'm slicing the ball a lot less. It's when I do now, it's more of like a draw, and it's less of hey, I'm hitting it, 3 fairways over. Um, and so I think, and hopefully, doing that on the driving range translates uh, to the golf course for me, and I'm able to do that less. And hopefully, that leads to more fairways hit. And if I'm hitting more fairways, hopefully I can hit more greens in regulation. So I laid out my goals here. So for greens and regulations, I'm at 13.1% now. My goal for the end of 2023 it would be to get to 25%. I feel like that's an achievable goal. It's only going up 11.9%. Obviously, that's not a super great percentage, hitting every 1 out of 4 greens in regulation. But for me, I feel like that would be an awesome goal to hit. Yeah, right now, I'm doing it, basically, you know, what, 1 out of every 30 tries almost. Um, so I think hitting it at 25% would be an awesome way to go. With my fairways hit, I want to go from 33.8 to 50. I would love to hit every other fairway. I feel like that is probably more of a stretch. Again, if I figured out my slice fix, hey, maybe that 50% is a lot more achievable. I think another way to go about it for me is I don't always need to hit my driver. I think that's my biggest thing right now. Is it doesn't matter what the hole is, unless it's like a super hard dog leg right, and it's almost like a 90-degree bend, and that bend's only 100 yards out there. I'm gonna hit a driver just about every time. So I think being a little bit smarter with my club selection. If I'm not having a good day with my driver, hey, let's just set it to the side for now. Let's take out my 5 iron. Let's just get out there in the fairway. Let's get the hole started. I got a 3 wood now. I know 3 woods are notoriously hard to hit, but hey, if I can hit it that day, and if I can just put a couple more balls in the fairway every round, again, hopefully that leads to being in better position to hit the greens in regulation. To hey, I'm not afraid to. I think another thing I would obviously. I think another thing I really want to push for this year, mentally, is to just aim for the middle of the green. I think caught up in just watching these guys on TV every weekend. When I go out and play around, I'm like, all right, I'm a pin hunter. I'm gonna hit this right at the pin. And, especially if it's tough to say the left or the right, I'm shanking it way left or way right. I'm missing the green in regulation. Now I got a chip, and now I got a three putt, and then I'm just mentally drained as the round goes on. So I'd love to start aiming, more for the middle, the center of the green, and hey, from there I can leg putt. If I still three putt from there, hey, it's not the end of the world. I'd rather take a three putt, five than a three putt seven, if that makes sense. So if I can just get onto the green and I can two or three putt from there, obviously, like I said, my goal is to do way less three putts. I think I said I want to average, like two putts a hole throughout the rest of the year. Obviously, I was a little bit closer than that than I realized over my last. Again, this is just the last 14 rounds, but I I I think just hitting the middle of the green and from there, just trying to get it close on the first putt, I think will keep me from mentally falling apart when I'm like, "Oh, great. I gotta try and chip over, some obstacle, whether it be a bunker or, like, a huge green side hill." I think that'll save myself a lot of, mental wear and tear throughout just 18 holes, and I think from there, that'll help a lot. So, those are my goals for this year with my averages, my percentages. Nick got that from, watching Matt Fitzpatrick this win, and we all know how meticulous he is about his stats. So appreciate him for that, and it's a lot of fun to talk about my goals. We will get Slade's goals next week when he is back with us. But shout out to Slade for working hard. Um, but we will see you guys in the next episode. Thank you so much for checking us out. As always, do not forget, head to w.gg, use code JACKWAGON for 10% off your order. We'd really appreciate you guys headed over there. They got some great new flavors that just came out. So make sure you guys head over w.gg, use code JACKWAGON, you get 10% off. Um, but thank you guys as always for checking us out. Hopefully the one man show wasn't too annoying for you guys. But nonetheless, we appreciate you as always for sticking with us. Don't forget, get us to 100 subscribers, and we will give this hat away to a lucky follower subscriber. We really appreciate you guys with your help with that. We will see you in the next episode. Enjoy the Zurich Classic this weekend. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Fun fact: Slade's brother's name is Zurich, and I'm probably gonna get flack later because I can never say the name right. I think I always say Zurich. Or I always say Zurich. It's Zurich, but I think I've gotten better with it with age. It helps having an English or a teacher as a wife who can sit there and do phonics lessons with you, so you learn to say words right, like bagel instead of bagel. Um, it's fun in this house. But we'll see you guys in the next episode. As always, thank you so much for checking us out. Have a great week.